Hello Internet, my name is Andrew Eder and welcome to another episode of Film Editorials. In my last video, which you can check out through a link down below in the video description, I talked about Batman vs Superman, a movie where a team of superheroes who should be working together are instead fighting each other. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing a film where a team of superheroes should be working together, but instead they're fighting each other. That's right, the topic of this week's video is Captain America: Civil War. Captain America: Civil War picks up pretty much right where Avengers: Age of Ultron left off, but because of the events of Age of Ultron and a couple other incidents that the Avengers are involved in where civilians get killed, the governments of the world decide that the Avengers need government oversight in the form of what's called the Sokovia Accords, because of the events that happened in Sokovia in Age of Ultron. This is where things get tricky because not all the Avengers want to have this kind of government oversight, and thus the Civil War begins and friends become enemies. Civil War is directed by the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe, and they were also the directors for Captain America: Winter Soldier, so they're back again. And the cast consists mainly of people who are reprising their roles from other superhero movies in the Marvel Universe. The list goes on, and I don't have time today to talk about all of them, but there's a whole bunch of people in this movie, and they've all been in other movies, namely Avengers: Age of Ultron. That's where most of them have been in before. The newcomers to this movie and the Marvel Cinematic Universe in general are Daniel Bruhl, who plays the villain Zemo, and Chadwick Boseman, who plays Black Panther. Also being introduced in this movie is Spider-Man, being played by Tom Holland. Now, going into this movie, I was equal parts trepidation and excitement. Excitement because I trust the Marvel filmmakers. I think the Russo brothers did a really good job with the Winter Soldier, so I was excited to see what they were going to do with this. But having just got out of Batman vs Superman, which was not a good movie, I was concerned that the sheer number of characters and all the moving parts and just the weight that this script is going to have to carry, just by the sheer nature of how many people are in it, it wasn't going to hold up. Luckily, my fears were unfounded. This movie, despite its moving parts, despite its complexity, despite its enormous cast, is actually really, really good. It's pretty clear right from the beginning of the action that the Russo brothers understand that because there's so many things going on, you need to know why these characters are fighting. They should be friends, they've been friends in the past, we need to figure out why they're gonna fight each other. So they make the central focus of the movie these characters who are butting heads who normally wouldn't be butting heads. And that's really important in this movie because we know the characters, and so you need to understand why they're fighting. At the same time, since there's so many other characters, you have to know why they're invested in this fight as well. And for the most part, they do a really good job with that. There are a couple key scenes where we're introduced to these characters and why they're feeling the way they're feeling, and we can see why the supporting characters are siding on whichever side they're siding on. I use siding a lot in that sentence. Some characters are also much more difficult than others. Like Scarlet Witch, her motivations for why she's in the fight are very clear, but I don't feel like we know her that well as a character, but that's really not this movie's job. This movie's job is to establish why she's in this fight, the Civil War fight, and it does that really, really well. A couple other characters also get kind of rushed into the story, but it's not so rushed as I don't understand why they're there. It's just, it would have been nice to have more time with them, but considering the movie's already 2.5 hours long, we don't really need to spend more time setting up these characters whose motivations are pretty clear already. As for the three main characters, Captain America, Bucky, and Iron Man, they're really well fleshed out. You sympathize and understand where each of them is coming from, so even I'm not sure if I'm Team Captain America or Team Iron Man, because this movie does a really good job of making both sides seem reasonable and understandable and relatable. Outside of the three main characters, the other two standouts are, of course, Black Panther and Spider-Man. Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther is awesome. He's a really cool character. I didn't really know much about the character going into it, besides what my friends had told me about the comics and stuff. And just seeing Chadwick Boseman's gravitas applied to this character who could easily be very silly was really cool, and he's just a badass the whole time. Kind of on the other side of the coin is Spider-Man, who is hilarious. Spider-Man definitely gets the most funny lines as a percentage of screen time. It's awesome. And that segues nicely into the balance of action and comedy that this movie has. It's basically perfect. The action is fantastic, both on a stunt level and as an effects level. It's really good effects. The action is interesting and compelling and varied. That's probably because there's so many different heroes fighting each other, so you get different fighting styles. You're not looking at the same 4 actions over and over and over and over and over and over again. But while they're doing all that fighting, there's all this humor, funny stuff happens. Funny lines are said. Breaking the fourth wall, it's fantastic. Just, like, I love it. The airport scene obviously is the standout. When you go see it, you'll understand. If you've already seen it, you already understand that that scene is probably the best in the movie, and one of the best action scenes that the Marvel franchise has put out so far. This combination of action and comedy is enough for me to recommend this movie on its own. This movie's supremely enjoyable, probably my favorite movie of the year so far. I don't know what else would rival it, because Star Wars came out last year. Looking forward, Star Wars is also going to be a threat to this movie, but that's a story for another time. This movie's not without its negatives, though, but the negatives are not going to inhibit you from enjoying this movie on a fundamental level. First among the negatives is the villain, Zemo. He's not as cool as I was expecting him to be. He's still an interesting and nuanced character, but I was expecting him to have a bigger role and to be more maniacal, I guess. So I was kind of disappointed in that. If you have lower expectations of him, you might not be so surprised and disappointed. The other big negative, the thing that actually annoyed me most about this movie, were the very large words that told you when and where things were happening. At the beginning of the movie, this makes sense because you need to know when and where you are. Then when there's a big time change, you again need to know when things are happening. But towards the middle of the movie, I think even the sleepiest audience member would be able to keep up with where the action is happening. Sure, you go from Vienna to Bucharest to Berlin in pretty quick succession, but none of those cities are terribly important to where anything else is happening. Like, if you don't know it's Bucharest, you're not going to be totally lost. They don't reference Bucharest that much later on, so it's not like you're missing anything if you don't know it's Bucharest. Thus, why do you need to have Bucharest in giant white sans serif font on kind of a light screen already, so it's already hard to read? I don't know why it was there. It was bugging me, and they keep doing it. And then they revisit the flashback from the beginning of the movie, and they do it again to remind you that it's 1991, and I don't need to know that it's 1991 because I already know it's 1991. You don't need to remind me of this because I already know it. And since the action that happens in 1991 is very distinctive and not likely to be confused with anything that's going on in the present day, I don't know why they included that either. And it was frustrating, and I didn't need to see the big white letters again. If I was going to say one bad thing about the pacing of this movie, is that they do take time to pause most of the action and introduce Spider-Man. I know why they need to do it, and I still really enjoy that scene, and that scene definitely pays off later, but it does kind of slow things down right in the middle of the movie. But it does really pay off later on, so I'm not that mad about it. So, what's my final verdict? Well, I'm going to have to give Captain America Civil War 5 stars out of 5. The action is exciting the entire time, and it's matched perfectly with really, really funny comedy. The plot of the story is focused and logical, and you can follow everything that's going on, and the casting for this movie is spot on. Everybody does a really good job, especially the newcomers like Black Panther and Spider-Man. As far as negatives go, the big white text is unnecessary and annoying most of the time. I was expecting more from the villain Zemo. If you're not expecting much, then this probably isn't going to be much of a negative for you, but it was a negative for me. And then some of the character motivations aren't completely fleshed out. You still know why they're in the fight, but it could have been better. Slightly. Just a little bit. Just a little bit better would have been good. Okay, I think that's going to be it for today's video. Let me know what you thought of Captain America Civil War down below in the comments, and feel free to chime in on the Team Captain America, Team Iron Man debate, because that should be interesting. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, favorite, share this video with all of your friends. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. I will see you guys next time. Bye! I'm still not sure if I'm Team Captain Man or Team Captain Man. Yeah, that's it.